I had done a session with everybody to say, this is the new tool and this is how it works. And someone came up to me about a week later and said, I've been trying to use the new tool, but I'm really struggling. Can you come and help me? So I sat down with him and he said, I'm not really getting any insights out of it. And I said my usual question of, well, what's your question? What's your objective? And he said, I don't have one. And I said, well, you're not going to answer any questions if you're not asking any questions. He had just put in his client's brand name and pressed go and just thought, all insights will pop out at me. And that's just not the way it works, unfortunately.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Megan Thompson is founder and data strategist at Lore Data, a consultancy built on a passion to make data-driven marketing more effective by making it brand-centered, collaborative, and human. She's worked in data roles at AMV, BBDO, Proximity London, and Ogilvy, and today she brings her skills to the podcast to talk about who's driving the data. Megan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. Good
Hello. Yes, after scheduling problems, we're here now, and we're here for you, the audience. But I wanted to start with maybe a silly question. A definition of data, because data, in quotes, means different things to different people. How is that possible?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question. And I think that people should check their definitions with each other more often, because we do all talk about different things. And what you have to consider is that it's moved at such a fast pace. So data in marketing used to be a specialism, when I started kind of 15 years ago. And for people with my background, data was all about CRM. So it was probably customer records and transactions, and we did a lot of predictive analytics.
Mm-hmm.
If you come from a media background, you're probably, when you hear the word data, thinking about budget optimization, targeting, that kind of thing. If you come from above the line, you're probably thinking about insights, creative-led insights. And then, as you and I talked about only recently, which I found a real shame, if you are a creative, when people talk about data, what I discovered is that creatives tend to hear, here is somebody with the numbers to say why my idea doesn't work. Here's the rational, here to stomp all over the emotional. So they think about forecasting and clients coming in like with the numbers. And I just think that really sucks, because it should be used to justify creativity. It shouldn't be used to hamper it.
Right.
And then, of course, what you've got is that everyone's trying to meet in the middle now. So we use the word data and we're all talking about totally different things. We've got totally different objectives for what it means to be data-driven.
Oh my gosh. And data limited, and data's holding me down, or we need data. Like, data is this promise. It's also this shackle. It's also like maybe it's a nice, shiny bracelet for you, and for another person it's handcuffs. It's so amazing because data driven, so you talk about, okay, so if there's all these different definitions of data, being data driven means what? I mean, like, who's really driving the data? I mean, is that a silly question, or different drivers, different data sets?
I love that question. Who's driving the data? I think it really depends on the organization. So it might be a chief data officer, a chief technology officer, even. I think a lot of the time when that happens, those are the people that get quite caught up in the implementation, and they can quite often end up being cut off from customers and from marketing, which is a shame.
Mm-hmm.
But they are the technical experts, so they do drive the data forward in a way that sometimes maybe it's not actually even being driven forward. I think if you talk day to day, though, in marketing, it tends to be the big onus is on clients, and then agency side, I think it's really on strategists. And
Mm-hmm.
that's tough. I think they struggle because there's they have so much on their plates. And then they're being expected to be an expert in this whole new thing that you and I just said. It means 100 different things. It's something different to everybody. Are you capturing it? Are you using it? You know, there's so many different facets to it. So to expect them to be driving data forward as well as managing it in the day to day, I think is really tough. I think it's why sometimes data is not being driven forward. In my ideal world, the person who would be driving the data forward is a data strategist, and it should be a data strategy officer, perhaps even rather than just a chief data officer, because I think that can become quite technical. And then for those strategists, for those marketing managers, people like that, they would have that data strategist as a partner, so they could be collaborating, and then you've got the data and the marketing side coming together. You know, they're actually working together rather than it becoming really technical.
And so, we were talking about this before we were recording. Data strategist used to be a bit more prominent, and now it's sort of disappearing, and maybe it's being subsumed by the amount of data and the technical wherewithal that needs to come with such a role that would know what even to do with the data, like just housing it, just laking it, clouding it, raining it, whatever the pipelines are, the ETLs, the reverse ETLs. Here we go. The rivers are running backwards. It's a biblical problem. And then someone's like, drive us forward. And you're like, well, I'm just in the middle of corralling 1,000 cats.
I'm stuck in the data lake. One of my clients used to call it the data swamp.
Yes, and I've heard mesh, fabric. I am so interested on all this stuff because already we know data, the definition of the word itself is wrong. Now there's all these things: a mesh, a fabric, a lake, a warehouse. But get back to this data strategy thing. You mentioned that that was a role, but now it's sort of disappearing, or are you saying it's rising in prominence? I mean, what does a data strategist do?
I would love to see it rise in prominence. It's a role that appeared and then seemed to disappear equally as quickly. And I think it's such a shame because all of those things that you just mentioned, it's so easy for everybody to jump on every different bandwagon that comes along and to try every new piece of tech that comes along, a new platform, a new data set. You know, everyone's heads are getting turned all the time. And if you have a data strategist, that person is going to help guide you through all of that and make decisions that are more in keeping with what you stand for as a brand, what your objectives are. So they'll understand the technical side, but they'll know how to apply it. And that's something that I hear all the time is, you know, we've got all of this data, but we don't know how to make it meaningful. We don't know how to apply it. And that's kind of where data strategy came from, because it used to be data planners. And if you remember this, if you're as old as I am in the industry, the data planner was the person in the CRM agencies who would make decisions around what customers are we targeting. And they would work with the partners that were out there at the time who were normally data brokers. So you'd go to all of the brokers, you'd get your lists put together, you'd manage deduping them, you'd brief analysts to get results. And then, as you say, as everything's grown, as all of these new technologies, they've come into the market, the role of the data strategist kind of grew out of that to manage all of them. And then, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what other people think about it, whether it's budget. I think there is a scraping through without a data strategist. A lot of people just getting by, and so they feel like it's hard to justify spending that extra money when you can just dump it on the strategist to manage instead. You know, if your client side, like I say, you're kind of just expected to learn all these new skills all the time. So yeah, it doesn't seem like it kind of came to bear the way it should have done, considering how much there is for everybody to know.
Well, and I think this question of, I mean, if you're in an agency, each client has unique data considerations and things that they're looking for. And, if you're working over here in fast moving consumer stuff and then you're doing, B2B, or, you're working in vegetables, or you're working in fabric and fashion, those data sets that come with that all are unique to the industry, the kind of trends and those kind of things. And like without a planner or a strategist, each new problem seems like each new problem rather than getting to that heart of what strategists do, which is
Yeah.
defining what we don't do. That's really the main remit of any strategist, is define what we don't do, not what we're gonna do. And I think a lot of people are like, strategists are basically these, like, they're holding divining rods and they'll lead us to the well. And really, they're going to tell you what to not do, because right now you see this tech, like you were saying, there's this new thing, there's a new thing, there's a new thing, there's a new way, there's a new way. The strategist role is to be like, sit down. You've had enough of your drink, But I'm thinking about that interpretation piece. Like, everyone at an agency is expected to understand client data, but they don't. And then those clients don't really understand that either. Let's get to this interpretation. Why is data interpretation so important?
Yeah, I mean, that's the piece that makes it meaningful, right? That's like you say, the role of the strategist to say, no, all of that stuff is just the mess around it. This is
Yeah.
where they talk so often, just the industry at large, people talk
Them.
so often about, you have so much data, but are you actually doing anything with all of it? How do you turn the numbers into the insight? And that, I think, is one of the big challenges of being a data strategist. And yeah, much like a strategist, a lot of it is about saying, no, that bit's not relevant, don't worry about it. Having the confidence and the experience to say, we don't need to worry about some of that. Everyone that's worked with me will laugh about this. One of the big things that I'm known for is that at the beginning of every meeting, I will make somebody articulate what the objective is for the project, because it gets lost so often.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what comes up with all of this, data without meaning behind it. And so that, so much of that is the interpretation, is to take it from numbers to information. That's why we call it data. We call it data strategy. We don't call it numbers strategy, do we? We call it data strategy. It's about turning it from numbers on a page into something that is useful and meaningful.
I have a question here.
Good,
I was
yeah.
thank you. I was thinking, us admitting that we are all stuffed with data, but starved for insights. The problem is what we're admitting is that the past, however many decades of data insight, sort of interpretation, has been a massive failure, because AI is here and it is going to be clear. Because we can't wait for Scott or Susan to with their problems, to like help interpret the data. We need data to interpret the data. And so in some way, are we like, what is this thought about AI is going to give insights from data faster and better than we've ever had? What does that mean? Have we failed the whole time and we're just going to hand the keys over to something that cannot interpret or make intelligence from things? It can think, but it can't make sense. And just wrap on AI, data insights, and the previous failure, apparently, of decades of people failing to make sense of data. Is it our fault? Wrap on it.
Is it our fault? Probably. Everything's always our
That's
fault.
what I'm. That's actually
I focus on making data more human, but humans are terrible a lot of the time.
Have you met humans?
But yeah, AI, I mean, obviously it's a hot topic. So yeah, let me wrap on it. Let me tell you what I think.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of failures. Yes. I think there's also a lot of successes, a lot of opportunities for success. I think it will be a mixed bag, the way that anything is, because AI is just a tool. I think the same way we talk about a lot of data sets is it's only ever going to be as good as the data that you put in it. So yes, absolutely, to your example, that if we haven't been doing it right up until now, how will it learn? How will it know what is insightful, what is meaningful? But also, I think on the flip side of that, I try not to worry too much, and I try to make other people feel reassured about AI and the way it's, ruining creativity and all of these things, because we should be allowing for something new to happen. If we allow AI to kind of run riot, we'll never generate anything new. And if we all want to work in marketing, we all want that to continue on. It's about creativity. It's about allowing for something new and different. And so AI, if we were to rely on it, would just get stuck in a spiral of repeating a lot of the same things. But that's also not ever going to happen, because as people, we do continually move on and innovate. AI will have to keep up with us as much as we have to keep up with AI. So yeah, a kind of non-answer, I guess, but failures, successes, fears from people, it's a mixed bag, the same way that any technology is, and it's being interrogated and utilized and just trialed right now, and I guess we'll see where we land on it.
Well, and I think that kind of leads into this next question about like AI, artificial intelligence. Most people can't define what natural intelligence is. So the fact that we're all scared about artificial intelligence, the truth is it's just a tool. If you give it good data and you ask it good questions and you work with it, you can get some pretty interesting things, but you really have to be cognizant. You have to be over aware of the possibilities for things to be spun out or to be sort of hallucinating, as they found with some of these models. It really takes an engagement, and you can find some great ability to maybe think a different way about data. Now, if you're thinking that it's going to give you the future, it can't, because that future, we need to have counterfactual reasoning. We need to have imagination. And those are things that can't be coded. And so that is sort of this fear coming back to this data and then creativity. Like a lot of people are thinking data's holding me back. Creatives think it'll like water them down. And I'm a creative person, and I have come to understand the true creative insight is within this massive, weird data qualitative thing where you find that really, that's interesting. And then that's the thing you dig in on, but you wouldn't be able to get it without data. So it's like, it just makes it, can you speak really about like that data fear?
Yeah.
Like is it a key? Is it a problem? Is it a tool again?
This is why people probably get absolutely sick to death of me saying it, but this is why I constantly bang on about that partnership that I described, where the ideal way of working is to have a strategist and a data strategist coming together, because based on the cultural understanding and the emotion that the strategist brings, and then the data sets can be interrogated to find something emotional. It's a win-win for both sides. You can do the really robust work, you can validate the thinking, you can give yourself more assurances, you can go deeper and broader in subjects, but it has to be the combination of both of them. And I think it's just embarrassing when people get it wrong. You can tell when they haven't brought those sides together. So I was having a conversation just this weekend about a BuzzFeed article where they used AI to generate Barbies around the world. So Barbies that represented different nations.
I'm already feeling like, oh no.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be scared of what this did, because they didn't have that partnership. So they just used some AI. They didn't look at the quality of the data that was going to be in there. They didn't think about the culture. And what they generated was a load of really embarrassing, stereotypical racist Barbies And as usual, I jumped into this conversation and said, this wouldn't happen if you had a data strategist and a strategist working together. That's the way that it works well. But it doesn't, not everyone is doing that. And so that's where, sorry, to go back to your fears point, this is why so many creatives get worried that data is here to ruin their work. It ruins an idea that somebody has, or it stops that idea ever seeing the light of day. But I think that is just a symptom of the bigger problem that we have, which you and I touched on a minute ago, which is there's this constant feeling, because it's all moved so fast in the industry, that you're not keeping up. You don't have the tech stack that you need. You don't have the data that you need. It's not moving between systems quickly enough. You're not utilizing it. Like, we're all constantly so worried that we're lagging behind. And so we jump into these things without thinking. We make poor short-term decisions. We capture that data that we didn't need because we were just desperate to have it. And then customers hate us. We promise the world to them, we under-deliver it. We're kind of half paralyzed by it. We're half super motivated. Like, it's a really crazy, frantic place. And it's no wonder that in the last kind of 10, 15 years, data planners don't exist. Then data strategists came along, and now that's kind of gone, and everyone's talking about a different thing with data. It's no wonder it's all such a big mess when you look at it.
Well, what you said is so interesting, because it's like, so we define what data is. We talked about data driven. We talked about the roles and the places and the responsibilities and the perspectives that these people need to have to officially deal with it in a great way. And yeah, but I'm also wondering, like, data, where does it come from? And then you're thinking, well, it comes from a computer, and it comes from the sky. And then, really, my friends, I hate to say this, but data is inside of a person.
It is a person. That's how I always think about it. Data is people.
Is that a weird thing? Because you're thinking like, oh, well, if they would have had the data on the Barbie thing. No. If you had a person in the room and you just asked, hey, is this Barbie like racist? And they'd be like, yeah. And you're like, word. Well, then, maybe we should change that. But it's very interesting, because this partnership, the way we kind of break into this mold, this amazing thought, brain museum of AI and data. The truth is, the key is people. The key is partnerships. The key is investing in each other and understanding each other and trying to interpret what we can do together, what you think, what I think. That's data too.
Yeah.
And it's soft data. I mean, there isn't a one. Like, how do I feel about this steak dinner? 2, or I can explain what's going on with, the flavor, the salt, like the environment, the ambiance, the silverware, this look, the lighting, that's data.
Yeah,
and I think we sort of disassociated ourselves from the fact that data comes from people's faces.
This is where my company came from, actually, because we have made data the stereotype that it's been seen by from other people. Everyone thinks data is
the Borg. It's a giant floating robotic space cube is what it is.
We've gone straight down that path. Everyone that works in data has allowed that to become true. And so I used to be head of data, and I had a team, and I really wanted to train them to be better data strategists. And I couldn't find any data strategy training. I could only find very technical analytics training. And if you're working somewhere much smaller, or perhaps client side, they don't tend to have data strategy roles. So you don't have that skill set in-house. So your strategists or your marketing managers, brand managers, they're being asked to pick up this extra skill set. There's nothing for them to learn. There's just lots of analytics training, but not everybody needs to be an analyst. That's not the point. We're not all trying to be hands-on, developers, coders. And so it's really, really off-putting for them.
Right.
But it doesn't exist. unfortunately, the thing that everybody needs, which is to make data more human, more digestible, and to then empower those people in those roles to actually get comfortable and confident with it and make those good decisions. But yeah, that was why I started my company, was no analytics training, no technical training, all about the much broader human, softer side of what data really is.
Well, and this gets at that heart of marketers are so confused by consumers and customers, and they say they're going to do thing and then they don't, they're and all that stuff. But we fail to see that the minute we stop working in our marketing roles, we go to stores, we buy things, we're also consumers. So for us to think that there is such a huge brick wall in between me and someone else who does something that I also do, I'm sorry. What? Wait, like, there's also this idea of, I know how these people are feeling, or I'm interested to find out how this person's feeling. So in a way, data isn't this oracle. It's a tool. It's an oracular tool that can get you places, make you take voyages you weren't going to, counter against your assumptions, and maybe even provide them. It's such a fascinating place, and I love hearing from you of how that data becomes human, because to me, I'm just like, okay, yeah, a spreadsheet is my friend. No. But the way you described it is when you're working with your friend in a spreadsheet, and they're thinking something and you're thinking something, and you're like, hey, that's interesting. Or I saw what you did, or I saw the way you, whatever, filter viewed some pivot table. I don't know what y'all are doing, but you're working with another person. So I think that's amazing. And well, so, I mean, let's get to like a story about you working with clients where it went really well. Like you got in here, you got them. Everybody has to give the objective at the beginning of the meeting. What describe like a Cinderella story, like where you worked with a client and it went rocking, and then if you can, give us a horror story.
Yeah, okay. We'll start with the Cinderella story. Let me tell you a few of the characteristics that make them the Cinderella, because I can't say their name, but they are a national optician brand here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that alongside the fact that this is a data case study, you're potentially setting yourself up there for something quite dry. But I think that they are the proof that you can do interesting things, and that the theory applies no matter where you go. You don't have to feel that you're in the most exciting vertical.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you see that a lot in the industry, is that everyone thinks, well, of course that brand can do it because, customers love them. And of course they'd want to share their data for that reason.
Right.
No, it can sometimes be much harder, but the theory still applies. And so what makes them a really great client is that they are data through and through. They don't shy away from it. So they start the process with data that is baked in. They're not scared of finding out things that they might not like to hear. That I think is huge. And that to me is so important as a function of data. It kind of goes both ways, I guess. If you want to do data well, you have to be scared of failure. So they are just happy to fail if that's what happens, if it means that they learn something, that they uncover an opportunity, whatever it might be. So start with data. They're really thorough, but they're also realistic. So when I say thorough, I think sometimes, again, it's a fine line, isn't it? If you get the tech guys taking the lead, sometimes it can feel like we're being a bit
boiling ocean kind of.
Yeah, we don't need to, being thorough doesn't mean that you have to go on forever. But so they're kind of this great balance of realistic but thorough. They don't get flustered by it. They're absolutely happy to fail. That's totally fine. One day we discovered that we'd had this big misunderstanding with how we were labeling some of the customer permissions to contact.
Oh.
We kind of misunderstood how to read the labels, and it turned out there were several labels actually, and it all got a little bit confusing.
Oh.
Nobody worried about it. I mean, to be fair, we weren't doing anything that wasn't compliant because we hadn't spoken to these customers. So admittedly, if we'd broken a law there, we might have been a little bit more concerned. But we hadn't spoken to them. We wanted to speak to them. And obviously that was a bit disappointing because then it turned out the volume was a bit lower. But everybody turned that into an opportunity. That means, okay, well, now we've got new targets and there's going to be more people that we can capture that information from because we're starting from a layer. But, they turn things into a positive. And I don't think that any of these characteristics probably sound like they are really, really data specific. You could talk about those in terms of the business, but that's what makes them really good at data is they're not scared of it. They don't treat it like it's something shiny and new. They don't treat it like it's a bullet. Like that's where they really do bake it in and they just make good decisions. Kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah. Well, and questioning, yeah, it's just so simple. That's it. But again, it's this healthy questioning of assumptions, being okay. And what I really like about this is this data can help you fix millions of tiny little things.
Yeah.
And it'll show you millions of tiny little things that are going wrong. And I think a lot of people are like, the data is going to lead us to this gold mine. It's going to be like insane. Or unless I have the data that turns over this huge leaf, it's not worth it. And then what you're saying is you found out there was a problem with the language and a permission pop up like at a random place. And fixing that completely realigned how you're connecting what potential audience size, growing, shrinking, those kind of things. Like from that small little thing, it bubbled up into some really interesting stuff. So I love the fact that data can help you get to these small, minute things that you're not paying attention to, So
I think if you see data as culture and people and customer experience, and you try and capture data by thinking about how would I talk to somebody in real life that I just met? Because you don't go up to that person that your friend has just introduced you to and say, hi, when's your birthday? Do you want to swap email addresses? Can I send you this stuff? Like what clothes do you wear? What products do you like? You don't ask all these questions.
I don't think I've ever asked. I've never asked anybody if they wanted to learn more.
No, I probably ask people that rather than just saying all of these things at them. But no, I've never asked somebody. Hey,
would you like to learn more?
That's what we do when we capture data, and it's not human and it's really off-putting.
Yeah.
And you just spread it out and treat people like regular human beings, then it all works much better.
That's amazing.
Yeah. What did you say a second ago that reminded me of one of my horror stories?
Oh, good. Please.
None of them are terrible, but I do really love a horror story anecdote. So I think you were saying about uncovering a big insight.
Sure.
And I was working in an agency and we had changed our social listening tool. So for anyone that hasn't used a social listening tool, you put in queries, it generates reports around conversation online and when and where, that sort of thing, topics. And I had done a session with everybody to say, this is the new tool and this is how it works. And someone came up to me about a week later and said, I've been trying to use the new tool, but I'm really struggling. Can you come and help me? So I sat down with him and he said, I'm not really getting any insights out of it. And I said, my usual question of, well, what's your question? What's your objective? And he said, I don't have one. And I said, well, you're not going to answer any questions if you're not asking any questions. He had just put in his client's brand name and pressed go and just thought, all insights will pop out at me. And that's just not the way it works, unfortunately. There's so many times in my career, I think I've had people just expect, the insight machine to just pop you out an award-winning insight. And it's about little incremental gains and understanding of the customer experience and little changes, and all these things come together.
Yeah, and so note to self for anybody who's about to, work with an AI thing, really figure out what you want first. And
Yeah.
and that I'm just saying AI is going to 10x the chances that there's going to be somebody just being like, well, I don't see any insights. It's because you don't have a question, Daryl. So really, it's so cool to talk to somebody like you who can help, because data, it's just overwhelming. It just is. And if you're a marketer and I'm just kind of the idea guy, like I'm here for the free lunch every once in a while, and now I have to learn SQL or have to R Python or what? Snakes? I'm scared of snakes. And you're like, well, if you want to be a marketer, you have to learn how to, you don't. You have to know how to get those good questions, understand those people that are doing it deeply, get that qualitative thing. Like there's so many places and roles for people in this data-driven future that in some way, and if I can bring it back, maybe we're all driving the data.
Mic drop. I love it.
But even then, have you been in a car that has 24 steering wheels?
I haven't. No, that sounds like it would be in a Salvador Dali painting.
or a giant pileup on the expressway.
Yeah. But I am a big fan of everybody leaning into data strategy. So maybe not everyone can take the lead, but if everybody can feel a bit more comfortable with data strategy and the fact that it's a human skill set, it's not a technical one. It's one that you get better in by asking lots of questions. Everybody can do a little bit of that and feel a bit more comfortable that data and success with data does not come from numbers. It comes from being human and open.
I'm going to put in some applause here because there needs to be a standing ovation. Megan, this has been so amazing. You're so wonderful. If people want to connect with you and learn more about you online, how can they do that?
I post on LinkedIn all the time, so please connect with me. I do lots of help content where I talk about all of these things. I've got a website, which is law-data.com, where you can read all about my opinions and the services that I offer. And you can email me, I guess, if you want to talk to me directly. You're welcome to email me.
Cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Cheese or chocolate?
Cheese.
Dirty data sets or a sink full of dirty dishes?
Oh, dirty data sets.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you got excited about that one.
I would stand for a sink full of dishes.
Invite Megan over. If your data sets are dirty, Megan's there. Text or talk?
Ooh, probably talk. I'm not a great texter. I'm slow to respond. I'm that annoying person.
Yeah, I know. And then they gave you the option to like or acknowledge the other one. Like that was like, so now do I have to like it? Do I have to respond? It used to just be so simple. Okay. All right. Tater tots or fries?
Fries, I guess. We don't really have tater tots over here.
That is ridiculous.
I only had them, I think, once or twice in my life.
Is this an American thing? This country is covered in tots, a thin layer of tots across the land.
Well, I think that's
upsetting.
where I've had them. Yeah, when I've been over visiting your beautiful country.
Yeah, well, and now at the naturalization ceremonies, everyone gets a free tater tot. I'm just kidding. That's not true. Somebody's like, I didn't get a tater tot. Well, you weren't cool enough. Okay, here we go. Starting a new book or finishing a book,
Oh, starting.
right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
finish is always so like,
I've
well, you're
got,
gonna
I've got
end like,
5. There's 5 on my coffee table at the moment that I've started.
well, you should finish a couple of them.
I'll get there.
I love it. No rush. You're busy. Okay, finally, and this is interesting. The last question is UFOs or CFOs?
What's a CFO?
The chief.
Oh,
Yes. Woo! Woo! We
I
do.
thought like some kind of new UFO. Like they released all of that confidential information. They changed the name of it.
That's right. It's UAPs now, but that's
Yeah.
why. Yeah, but I ain't playing that game. But I love the fact that you're like, what is CFOs came to Earth?
Yeah. Wow. what
They're
is that?
here among us.
I don't know how to pick between those two. One of my good friends is a CFO, so I'm going to go CFO in that choice. But I feel very conflicted. I don't know how to pick between them.
It's hard. I mean, one of them is, completely disproven and we're not sure. And the other one is UFOs.
Exactly.
Oh, I still got it.
What Gets Measured is a NinjaCat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social. And visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.